The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the incredibly awful mentor slash frenemy that sucks. That is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him.
All right, yeah, so we're finally going into Hammer territory. I feel like there's like the two sort of foundational Frankenstein series. We've done Universal, so of course now in the new year, it's time to do Hammer.
Yeah, and as we begin our new year, let's do something we promised ourselves we would do, and have a little bit of a what are those called, calls to action. So
yes, of course.
So yeah, if you're listening to us on YouTube, please do all the likes, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you are on Spotify or iTunes, just go ahead, give us a like, or any type of feedback is good feedback.
Yeah. I know iTunes is sort of like the big aggregate place. Like, if you can go there and, write a review or even just do a rating, those really help. I think we're seeing our numbers kind of slowly increase, but I think stuff like that would definitely cause, a lot more eyes or ears, I guess I should say, to find us. And, we've got a lot of big plans in the future, and, we want to be able to keep doing this. So any support we can get, and like Eric said, any feedback, the end of the show, we list the social media and email and stuff, and just an email letting us know what you think, that would all be very much appreciated.
Definitely.
All right, yes, so it's Hammer time.
Hammer time.
So of course we start out with The Curse of Frankenstein, the first Hammer film. Or the first Hammer Frankenstein film, which I think might actually be the first Hammer horror film. Pretty sure. I think that Hammer kind of was doing sort of standard stuff, and they were kind of floundering a little bit, and they kind of took a page out of Universal's book from a couple decades earlier, and said maybe horror is the thing that'll put us on the map, and they were right.
Absolutely, and even they're still technically there today.
Yeah, Hammer's still around. They kind of didn't do much for a little bit, but they've kind of made a resurgence, and they're still making horror movies. I think they do a little bit of other stuff too, but horror is definitely their bread and butter.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, yeah. So this movie, we start out and we've got actually it really felt like the Universal movies, because you've got a man on a horse going up a path in the foreground with some with sort of painting. Yeah, with a big elaborate matte painting in the background. Obviously this is in color, so it's a little bit, it's more vibrant than we were seeing in the Universal movies. But it's still kind of elicited the same sort of vibe. It's still definitely handmade sets and matte paintings in place of location shooting.
Right. And to a degree, it kind of gives a slight callback to the early Universal horror Frankensteins and their German expressionistic...
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, background, basically, with the kind of...
And it feels like it's an intentional sort of... not because beyond this scene, we're mostly in indoor sets that could be, that look like legitimate location, but it does kind of feel like it's an intentional nod back to what Universal was doing.
Right. It's this, and everything else is going to be gothic from here on out. Just
pure
absolutely.
Gothic. Yeah. Yeah, so the man on the horse gets to like a castle. He goes inside, and we find out that he's a priest, and it's a jail, and he's here to visit a prisoner, and that prisoner is Baron Frankenstein.
Dun dun dun.
So right out of the gate with this, it feels a little bit more close to the novel. It's not exactly, the novel is sort of done like with letters and stuff like this, but this sort of framing device already kind of makes it feel a little bit more in that literary style than the Universal ones do. So like the whole premise is, the priest has come and he thinks that the Baron wants to like confess or, get some sort of like last rites or something. But he actually is just like, no, you're the only person I knew who would come and who would listen. And I just want to tell my story.
Yeah, he kind of wants, a confession, but to a different degree, one that'll get him out of it as opposed to get him into heaven, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so then we kind of cut to like, it's like a flashback, and we first start with like a young Victor Frankenstein.
Super young baby Frankenstein.
Yeah. And he's kind of this little like smart aleck little kid. Like he inherits his mother's estate. She's died. And you kind of get like, it's like his aunt, and she apparently, I guess, was getting like a monthly allowance stipend from his mother, and he's like, yes, I'll continue the payments, get out, go, and like he's definitely got like an air of superiority like right out of the gate.
Yeah, I definitely wrote in my notes that he is the little shit version of Frankenstein.
Absolutely.
Because he walks in, and you can already tell he knows he is the smartest man in the room. And that does not change even in his later years. Yeah,
and even like he hires a tutor, and like, the tutor comes and he still has to like show the tutor how clever he is. Like, he's acknowledging he needs some education, but at the same time he's like, I kind of outsmarted you and tricked you into coming here even though I'm a kid.
Yeah, he basically said he was the elder Baron Frankenstein, and he wanted the Paul Crimpy is the guy's name. Even it sounds like Crimper, but it's like Crimpa or Crimpa. Yeah. But so he basically says, no. I was the one who was writing you the entire time. I hired you to tutor me.
He sort of has to convince him to stick around, and once he does, we get like a little bit of like a learning montage of like, Paul kind of like chalkboard and, books and, just the good old standard montage. And then we get to adult Frankenstein still working with Paul.
Yeah, and it seems like almost at the end of the training montage, as it were, that young Baron Frankenstein has now started kind of teaching, or at least he's explaining things to Paul to a degree.
Yeah, like they're quickly like on the same level, or like possibly, that he's even surpassed him.
Right.
Like I think he even says something about that, like even once I, he had nothing else that he could teach me, like we continued to like work together or something like that.
Yeah. They were fast friends and long allied together.
Yeah.
But then after we have that little montage, we quickly move into science.
Yep, and it's the lab scene. It's nice because it feels again like they're kind of nodding to the Universal stuff. Like there's a lot more modern equipment in there, but there's still a lot of just like the kind of nonsense equipment that we saw in the Universal movies. Yeah, a lot of just like things that spin that don't necessarily seem like they do anything, but they look cool.
Random bubbling potions for whatever reason.
Oh yeah.
Oh, also heads up, there's some heavy anti-ASMR crackling going on at this point. Oof. With my headphones, it was rough.
And so then we get like the first sort of like his attempt at, the whole Frankenstein deal of like bringing life to things. So they have like this weird sort of fish tank sort of thing with a dead puppy in it. And they, do the science, and the puppy, comes back to life.
Yeah, I was kind of scared there for a moment. I was like, did they really almost drown this dog? No, they just had a very well-trained pup.
Yeah, I actually rewound that too and like looked at where the cuts were and stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, so this was a fake dog. This was the real dog.
It was a plush toy to begin with, and then it did transform into
Yeah, so I don't think the dog was in the water for too long, and it worked out just fine. But yeah, so like they revive a puppy, and this is sort of where you kind of get like a different. So like, in the originals, it's just like Frankenstein just is like, I want to create life, I want to find the secret of life and death. But here he's already kind of done that. Like he has brought life to a completely dead thing, and Paul's like, this is a miracle. There's a convention coming up, we need to present a paper, we need to show the scientific
surgery, right?
Yeah, like we need to show the scientific community what we've done. This is incredible. And Frankenstein is like, no, bringing back something dead to life is nothing. Like I don't care about that. That's whatever. What I want to do is make a new life out of something that was not. Like I want to take parts and put them together. And before I felt like that was sort of a means to an end. Like I don't have a full functioning corpse, so I'm going to build one.
Right.
But in this case, that's actually what his intentions are.
That is the end goal, is we are going to create new men.
Yeah, exactly. And Paul is like right out of the gate, he's skeptical of this, but he does kind of go along with it for a little bit.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, the next scene, like it cuts to them. They're like stealing the corpse of like a hanged criminal. They bring him back to the lab, and we get this great bit where like, they say that the head was like, severely damaged by, carrion birds, basically.
Yeah, the eyeball pecked out.
So they're like, well, we can't use the head. Mm-hmm. And Victor's like, okay, fine. So he just like chops the head off.
Right.
And
just goes right into it, just saws it right. By the way, there's not too much gore in this aspect of it. It's basically he's standing over the body, sawing motion, head and bag. Then he goes and tosses it into a nice acid bath that's conveniently waiting in the back of the laboratory.
Yeah, that's the Chekov's gun of this is the acid bath.
It really is, yeah.
But yeah, and Paul's definitely like, okay, like I think the chopping off the head so nonchalantly is kind of concerning him a bit.
Yeah. He definitely gives him a look at that point, doesn't he?
Yeah, but Frankenstein's like, don't worry about it. I've got a plan. It's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. I'm going to leave town. I'll be back shortly.
Yeah, it's a business trip, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely got business to attend to. Mm-hmm. But while he's gone, his cousin Elizabeth, who we met briefly, as a child, in that first scene with his aunt, she shows up.
Yeah.
And, she's like, Victor was expecting me. Did he not tell anybody? And everyone's like, no, we don't know who you are. We've never heard him mention you.
Yeah, we're also introduced to Justine at this point, and she becomes a much more important character later. But already there's a little bit of jealousy between the two the moment they meet.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, as soon as, like, when Victor gets back, I think Elizabeth thinks that he's going to be, like, excited to see him, and he just kind of ignores her and is like, they'll be fixing dinner later. You can get something. I've got work to do. I'll see you later. And so he goes to the lab, and this is where we find out what his business trip was, which is that, like, he found out there was a sculptor who had recently died, and he dug up his coffin to get his hands.
His lovely hands.
Because, of course, yeah, the hands of a sculptor, they're going to be just so dexterous and skilled, better than, just the, crude criminal's hands that he had currently.
Exactly. And I believe they're also going for the mind of a genius. Basically, literally piece by piece, putting together, once again, the perfect man.
Yeah, and this is kind of the first, in the Universal ones, it was kind of just like beyond, we wanted a good brain, but beyond that, it was just like whatever was available.
Yeah.
But this kind of sets the precedent that we'll see over and over again of like people like building, the perfect person. Mm-hmm. We'll have like, I think there's several movies where it's like, I'm going to build the perfect woman and stuff like that,
Right.
But this kind of sets that sort of precedent in place that we can, cherry pick, basically, build a human a la carte based on our preferences.
I'll take these hands, these feet, these legs,
Yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, Paul is kind of he's out. He's like, no, we've gone too far.
Yeah, and of course, Victor is, of course I'm not going to stop. I've only just begun. Like, we've got so much to accomplish.
Yeah. And it's pretty much like, you're coming along too, Paul. Sorry about that, but...
Yeah, and Paul, like, so he goes down to dinner with Elizabeth, while Victor continues his work, and he's like, please, I know I can't really explain why, but you need to leave. Like, don't stay here. You're in danger. You do not want to be here. Right. And she's really confused. But she's like, of course I'm going to stay. We're engaged to be married, so this is where I belong.
Yeah, and this is one of my first Paul sucks moments, is that he's basically like, it seems like he's trying to take Liz out from under Victor, but he's also calling her like she won't understand. Is his whole argument. She just won't get it.
Yeah, and it's like, if you really think she's in danger, like tell her why. Like, right. give her some reason to trust you in this situation instead of just being like, yeah, he's definitely kind of a jerk to her. Like, he doesn't tell her why. He just tells her to leave, and then when she says they're engaged, he's like, well, this is an arranged marriage? You don't even know him. Like, what kind of idiot would do this? And she's like, I've known him my whole life. Like, this has been in the works for a long time, and we've been communicating, and you might not have been aware of this, but like, this is not anything new.
Right. And honestly, for the time, it probably wouldn't be that out of sorts anyway. But, yeah, it's neither here nor there.
So yeah, Paul's kind of a jerk, but then, immediately from this scene, we cut to Victor, who is clearly having an affair with Justine. He's like, they're kind of fooling around in the hallway. And, she kind of asks about Elizabeth, and he's like, you're going to be Elizabeth's servant, which is really
right.
Just.
By the way, Victor sucks too, but he's a little bit, he more sucks towards Justine, like, explicitly.
Yeah. Yeah, just like Justine wants to marry Victor as well, and he's just like, no, right. You're just going to be the servant to my wife, and also, we're going to just continue this affair in secret.
Yeah, you're going to be my side piece, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess we should say, so Victor is played by Peter Cushing, mm-hmm. who at the time was not, an icon of horror, but like Hammer would definitely like cement his place as, between he's Dr. Frankenstein throughout this whole series, and then is also Van Helsing in most of the Dracula ones. So he's, a huge icon. If you're not familiar with like, horror from the 70s, you mostly would probably know him from Star Wars, where like George Lucas, brought, basically because of these movies, George Lucas was like, let me, bring this old hero of mine and give him a role. So he's Grand Moff Tarkin, I believe.
Yep, that's him.
The dude who gets like force choked by Vader in A New Hope.
And eventually blown up on the Death Star.
Yeah.
But also, this will be one of our first few meetings between him and a certain monster, who will play more monsters in the future. Namely Count Dracula.
Yep, and he's definitely like they're like sort of like the pillars of like British horror.
Yeah, Christopher Lee.
Yes, Christopher Lee, who we haven't seen yet, but who will be the creature in this movie, and also it was in Star Wars. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Lord of the Rings.
Yes. Yeah, he's had a much, I would say, a more, like, popular career. Like, he's been around in, like, the pop zeitgeist a little bit more. Like, Cushing had his sort of, like, niche and kind of stayed there. They're both incredible actors, but in this case, in our Frankenstein movies, Cushing is definitely going to be, like, the more actorly role, like... Right. Christopher Lee, being the creature, it's, like Karloff, but he does still bring a lot to the role. We'll get to it here shortly.
Yeah, and also let me go ahead and state this. I've got to side with my boy Christopher Lee because he did a metal album as the role of Charlemagne.
Oh yeah, I've heard some of that. It's like, yeah, he like kind of sings sort of or talks.
Yeah,
like it's pretty cool though. Like it definitely is. It's unique and it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, you should definitely check it out.
And like he just seems like a cool dude. Like he's just down for whatever. He's just like, and there's a lot of like old. I think there's a video. I think it's like one of those like This Is Your Life type old game shows, and it's like they do one that's his birthday, and Vincent Price shows up and he like it was like a surprise. He like flew across the globe basically to come to this, and like seeing those two guys and like their friendship was just, it's like a really sweet little thing. I'll try to track that down and throw it in the show notes, but awesome. It's a fun little clip if you can find it.
Yeah. Now listen to me, Anthony. I know that he passed away in June of 2015, but I think we should do some science experiments. Okay? Very in the vein of this show.
Yeah, exactly. We need to bring these guys back.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's. So after the affair, we see like the next morning, Elizabeth's like, "Hey, I can help. I can help you with whatever you're doing. We can sort of bond over your work." And of course, Victor is not having that. He's not interested at all. I almost wonder if this is her, like, maybe taking what Paul said to heart and, like, maybe I need to see what he's up to and find out if this is, a problem. But, of course, he kind of turns her away and it doesn't scare her off. So she may not have been listening too much to what he had to say.
Yeah, no, there's a couple back and forths that Victor and Paul go through. And to a point, it's almost like Victor is either placating Elizabeth or he's like, no, for real, when we get to the end of this thing, you're coming into the lab. We're going to get you on board here.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I do think at this point he is placating her.
Yeah. And so then we get this great bit where he, like, Victor goes... I'm not really sure where he is. It doesn't really, like, clearly state. But he buys some eyeballs from a person.
Yeah, at a charnel house. Just a random charnel house.
Yeah, and... Like, I'm guessing these are probably real eyes they're using from some sort of animal.
Right.
Because they look legit, and they're, like, he gives them to him, and, like, he just drops them into this, like, big test tube, just two eyeballs together. They're not floating in any sort of preservative. They're just, like, just gross eyeballs plopped into this test tube. Mm-hmm. So then he, like, brings them back to the lab, and then that's where Paul shows back up. And yeah, like you said, we get a lot of back and forth from them. This kind of scene repeats over and over again. But like at this point, Paul is like, "Okay, I'm going to stick around here, but just because I want to protect Elizabeth. Like this doesn't have anything to do with you. Like I'm done with what you're up to. But I think Elizabeth needs a protector here in the house, and I don't think I don't think you're safe anymore."
Right. Versus just coming right out and saying, "Hey, here's the deal." No, I'm going to silently be her protector and make sure whatever you're doing is not going to affect her.
Yeah, I mean, we from all the movies we've watched so far, there's definitely been a running theme of like men not trusting women to know anything, right. And it generally ends up working out badly.
Yeah, so I mean, just tell your significant others the plans and science that you're doing in your basement or your laboratory.
Yeah, it works out better for everybody if we're all informed of any sort of, dead bodies being brought into the house, anything like that. Just keep everybody on the same page. It helps. Listen,
once we get to April, there's a certain movie we're going to watch where it does work out for everybody.
And always remember, if you're married, they can't testify against you.
Right. Yep.
So your secret is safe with your spouse, right?
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
So Victor shows Paul the current progress. And again, Paul is like, this is disgusting. You need to stop. And Victor's like, I promise it's all going to come together once I get the right brain. And I've got an idea. Like, I've got the right brain kind of lined up. And once that comes into place, everything else will make sense.
Yeah, coincidentally, we're about to have dinner with Professor Bernstein. So, yeah.
Yeah, I need a nice, smart brain. Oh, here's this, this famous professor I just happened to invite over. What could go wrong there?
Right. Is it Bernstein or Berenstain? No, sorry, I'm not kidding.
I guess it depends on which universe you're in.
That's right, yeah.
And yeah, so they kind of have like a sort of serious conversation where the professor's like, don't let your experimentation take over your life. He's kind of, wise elder gentleman, and he's like, you should appreciate your family and not be stuck in a lab all the time, because your scientific work, though important, is not the main reason for living. You need to do more.
Exactly. He coincidentally drops that because he was so invested in his science that Victor doesn't want to end up like him, old, alone, no relatives, no one to call in case something happens.
Nobody who knows my whereabouts at the moment. Yeah. So yeah, then they chat for a little bit, and then he's like, well, I'm gonna head to bed, and Victor's like, well, let me show you to your room, and he takes him upstairs, and then immediately is like, hey, back up right here against this balcony so you can
he's like, here's this picture my father had a great artist make, and it just looks like some judicial hall scene or something like that, from what I can tell. Yeah.
But to fully take it in, you got to get a little bit of distance. So yeah. Just another few steps. Yeah, that's just right. And then he, does the whole
doctor's face. Watch out, Dr. Bernstein, and then shoves him off the banister.
Yeah. So, he does the watch out for anybody else who might be listening, and the professor falls to his death, and of course, it's like the next evening or whatever, he's like in the crypt, breaking into the coffin, stealing the brain. Mm-hmm. And, Paul, I guess, and then he takes it back to the lab, and Paul's like, you obviously killed the professor and stole his brain, right?
Right.
And so they get into a fight. Oh, no, that's actually in the crypt, isn't it? Paul follows him to the crypt.
Yeah, he's like, what are you doing here? I pretty much knew you were going to be here.
Yeah. And so, they kind of get into a fight, and Paul, the brain is in a glass jar inside, a burlap sack, and he, hits it, and the glass shatters.
Right. Now, this is the idea that everything goes wrong here. But I'll be honest with you, the doctor took a tumble onto his head. I'm going to go back there and say that, Victor's initial plan was flawed from the beginning.
Yeah, there are definitely better ways to kill somebody if you're going to be trying to save their brain than a long distance fall.
Right. I don't know. Maybe poison, but I'm not endorsing anything, and I don't want to go too in depth into this. Okay.
Yeah. So Paul goes back to the house, and again is like, Elizabeth, you need to leave. This is dangerous. And again, she's like, I'm not going anywhere. And so then we get Victor sort of investigating the brain, making sure it's not too damaged. I think he pulls some bits of glass out of it.
Yeah, just picks it out with tweezers. He's like, this is fine. Just blows it off, brushes it off. This is fine.
Yeah, it's 5-second rule kind of thing. He's like, it'll be fine. So then we get the nice stormy night and all the science gear whirring and bubbling and all that. And he Victor tries one more time to get Paul in on the experiment, and is like, this is a 2-man operation. I really need your help. We designed all this equipment so that 2 people could run it from either side of the lab, and I just don't know if I can do it myself.
Yeah, I can't just smack all these buttons and wear these levers all by myself, man. Come on. I need your help here.
Yeah, but and Paul, of course, is not having it. But meanwhile, the larger version of the puppy fish tank, the giant, man-sized tank, is draining of liquid, and we can see that the fully wrapped up creature inside is breathing. Mm-hmm. The creature, to start with, kind of has a similar vibe to the Bride and the Bride of Frankenstein, sort of a mummy thing going on, just fully head to toe wrapped up.
Oh yeah.
So while Victor and Paul are arguing, they hear glass break, and so of course Victor runs into the lab
and runs face to face with the bandaged form of the monster.
Yeah, and he the creature sort of reaches up, and it the bandages look like wraps, but he he's able to easily pull the whole face wrap off in one quick little grab.
Yeah, that was a pretty good.
And here's where again, this sort of feels closer to the novel than the Universal thing, where the creature is ready to kill right away. Like, he is not the sympathetic child that Karloff is.
No.
As soon as he pulls off his face wrapping, he's like, ready to strangle Victor. He's like walking forward with his, hands out, and starts choking him out, and is only stopped because Paul, follows Victor in and, knocks the creature out from behind.
Yeah, you could definitely read this a couple different ways, but I kind of want to imagine that it's the actual Professor Bernstein's brain being like, oh, this guy, he killed me. I'm returning the favor on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it can definitely be read that way. That makes that, that would make perfect sense. Or you can do the whole, like, this is a damaged criminal type brain now because of the glass or whatever, or some combination of the two.
Abby normal.
Yeah. So in this case, we don't get like the whole, like, there's not like a victory dance for Frankenstein here. Like, he doesn't, get to do the whole it's alive and like be excited about his accomplishment. He sees that though the creature is, alive and moving around, he has failed in some major ways, and is, already planning on like, what can I do to fix this damage?
Right. And Paul's like, let's just kill this thing. Just immediately, nothing else, just kill it.
Yeah. But of course, he's dedicated that he's going to find some way to fix it. So he's got the, lock the creature down. But then, it cuts to like the next morning and the monster's escaped.
Right. Everything's broken in the lab. The monster's just gone.
And, that's the way things go. That monster cannot be held with, basic chains and doors. We've seen him break through all kinds of chains and locks and stocks and all kinds of stuff.
Right, and this version's awful squirrely to begin with. I mean, he can climb, he can run, he can do all the things.
Yeah, he definitely is more like at home in his body right away than the Universal version.
Right.
And so then we get a scene that is another one that kind of feels like a nod back to Universal. The monster is going through the forest, and we see this. It cuts to like a child and his blind grandfather, and they're exploring the forest as well.
Yeah. And
like the kid goes off to do something. I think get firewood or something.
Yeah.
And while the blind man is sitting by himself, the monster approaches. And in Bride, you've got like this like open, loving blind man who's like ready to accept a friend even if he can't see anything, and you've got a creature looking for a friend. But here you have a creature looking to hurt people.
Right, yeah.
And a blind man. Yeah, and the blind man is like on it. He's like, he doesn't trust the creature right away. He's like, get away from me. He's scared and tries to run, but obviously, he's blind and in the middle of an unfamiliar forest, so he doesn't. It doesn't go well for him.
Yeah.
We kind of just like cut away.
Right after he does the final girl trip and fall, right?
Yeah. And then we have the boy, and he's kind of sitting by a pond in another sort of nod to like Maria by the pond. Mm-hmm. And he just, like turns really fast and is like, Grandpa, and like runs off. So it's pretty clear that the grandpa is dead, and now like the kid is, running to his own demise.
Right. Which it doesn't take long for us to find that out, because the Baron and Paul come running through the same forest. Paul, of course, carrying his hunting rifle, double-barreled.
Yeah, and it's like, Victor is like determined to preserve this creature, but yet is like, teamed up with Paul, who has a gun. And
Paul
of course,
not hiding his intentions.
Yeah, so they like follow the trail. They find like, evidence of what's happened. Then they find the monster, and Paul immediately just shoots him in the face.
Just not even saying hi, just, oh, there's the monster. Okay, boom.
And we get like our first sort of like bright red gore, which, that's what we're going to see a lot of in these Hammer movies, is like, stark red, like almost neon red, if such a color could be, it's like paint,
Yeah.
And it like squirts out of his face as he, gets hit.
It's not real reality. It's almost like hyper reality.
Oh yeah,
to a degree. It's like, it's so vivid.
Yeah, so they're convinced he's dead, and they like decide to bury the monster. Mm-hmm. And Victor is like, I'll never forgive you for killing putting a stop to my work.
Right.
But now that Paul is like, well, now my work here is done. I've stopped the monster. Elizabeth's safe. I'm leaving. I'm done.
But as he's saying his goodbye, we pretty much immediately pan and see that the doctor or the Baron has already gathered the monster and put him on a meat hook.
Yeah, he's like, as opposed to like the normal sort of slab things, he's sort of like hanging. I mean, I guess it kind of nods to the hanged man from the beginning of the movie, but
Right.
yeah, it's a really interesting way to sort of display the creature, I guess I should say.
Right.
And then we get like, Victor gets confronted by Justine. He continues to talk about, that he's not going to marry Justine. He's marrying Elizabeth, and this is where, Justine sort of seals her fate by dropping the bomb that she's pregnant.
Yep.
And not only is she pregnant, but she knows about his experiments. So he needs to marry her, or else, she's going to tell people what he's been up to.
And this is kind of where the Baron goes into full villain mode. Because he gets up into her face and he's like, what proof? What proof do you have that I did the things you're about to say I'm doing? Give me that proof.
Yeah, and it almost like he's like, you're fired, just leave. Like,
Right.
I'm done with you. And
he even says, how do you know it's really my kid, not somebody else's in the village? And it's like, wow, okay, buddy.
Yeah, there's that very slut-shamey line, like, oh, this could, the way you are, this could be anybody around town.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, every guy in this movie sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, because, she doesn't have, he's like, you're fired, be gone first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, she's looking for proof now.
Yeah.
So that night, she's creeping around the castle looking for proof. And unfortunately, she finds it, but Victor's hot on her heels, so she goes into her room, sees the monster, and then Victor locks the door behind her.
Yeah, he's like, okay, here's the solution to my problems.
And so, yeah, of course, as the monster does, he, kills her. So this is another one of those examples of, like, the monster being weaponized.
Right, exactly. And, of course, the monster also now has his other eye back, but it's a completely black eye at this point.
Yeah, and the makeup in this, it's a lot more subtle. I guess we didn't really talk about it. It doesn't have, the trademark, like, literally trademark universal flat top head.
Right.
And, like, I think the American distributor, like, this was not done with a deal with Universal. And I think Universal was very explicit, like, this book may be public domain, but if you encroach on our territory, we will be very litigious.
Right.
So
was it Warner Brothers, or maybe it was MGM had the rights at the time?
I think it was Warner Brothers. I think you may be right. Yes. Yeah. So this creature, he's pale. He has like kind of waxy flesh, like a dead person would, and you still have some of the stitching and all that. And he's got like the mismatched eyes, and there's a lot of like blackout stuff in his teeth.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he definitely looks kind of zombie-ish almost, more than like than the monster we've seen before.
Yeah, this monster definitely looks like he's seen a lot of life before he actually had life.
Yeah, and they're not trying to make him sympathetic. So like, Karloff, he still did have the stitches and the bolts and everything, but like there still had to be like a human quality in the face and everything.
Yeah.
And they're not trying to make this a likable creature, so
No.
so they kind of are able to lean more into the monstrous qualities.
Oh, and they do. But then the next morning, Victor and Elizabeth are having breakfast, and Liz worries about Justine. If you notice that line.
Yeah, she does kind of. I don't know if it's an accent thing or just a line flub, but yeah, she definitely says Justin. Mm-hmm. And she's like, where has she gone? And Victor kind of does sort of, oh, I'm sure she's just like off somewhere. You know how she is.
Well, yeah, with any guy in town, because that's how she is.
Yeah,
because I'm still awful.
But here Elizabeth also, they start talking about wedding invites as well, and she's like, just so you know, I invited Paul, I guess she doesn't think Paul sucks as much as we do.
Right, yeah. Yeah, which is also interesting because, as a side note, like, they've really only met a few times, and maybe they have become fast friends in this time, but they didn't really show that.
Yeah, I mean, all we've seen is just him occasionally telling her to go away.
Right. Get out of here. You don't want to be here.
So then we, like, cut to this scene that, like, it's like a wedding toast thing. It's a guy...
Yeah, like a reception.
Yeah, it's at the reception, and I don't know who this guy is supposed to be, because Victor is supposed to be an orphan, and so is Elizabeth.
Right.
But this guy's, like, he says he's practicing his wedding toast, so he just keeps, like, pouring himself another shot and saying, like, to the happy couple, and he takes a shot, to the bride, another one, to the groom.
To the bridesmaids. It just keeps going.
And then, like, a woman who, you know, we assume is probably his wife is like, what are you doing? He's like, I gotta be prepared for the toast.
Yeah.
And so then we're like back at the Frankenstein home, and Paul shows up. And Elizabeth's like, well, you should go see Victor. He's up in the lab. And of course, you know, that Paul strolls in and sees that the monster's been revived. He's, you know, alive and semi-well and, you know, chained to a wall. Now has, like, a weird, like, half-shaved head where brain surgery's been performed.
Yeah, and it looks like Victor's taught him a few new tricks. Namely, how to stand, walk forward a couple steps, and then sit down.
Yeah, it's like he's changed from, like, a sentient and malevolent creature to just, like, a dog, basically.
Effectively, yeah. Which... Wait a second. Wait a second. You don't think that he replaced the part of the professor's brain with the... Oh, no. Oh, no. I didn't even think about that at the time.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, sort of like a lobotomy kind of situation. Like, he's just, you know, poked around in the brain to the point that it's, you know, not very, you know, cognizant anymore.
No, that's probably more accurate, but I'm going with my headcanon now. Thank you.
And so Paul's like, where was your whole big plan about, you know, that you were going to create a superior intellect and this new race of men that, you know, they're elevated creatures, and now you've just got this, you know, servant, basically. Right. And, you know, Victor's like, this is your fault. You know, if you hadn't damaged the superior brain that I had, then, you know, I would have gone with this original plan, but now I've got to just, you know, have this thing dumbed down to where I can control it because it's dangerous otherwise.
Right. And of course, Victor doesn't take any possible blame for the fact that he made the professor do a header over the banister, but, you know, that's fine.
Yeah.
We've come to expect that from Baron Frankenstein.
Yeah, you know, really none of the Frankensteins that we have met are very quick to accept any sort of responsibility.
Not at all.
And so Paul's like, well, okay, this is the last straw. I'm going to the authorities. I'm gonna put a stop to this one way or the other.
Yep. And of course Victor's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, so he kind of follows after him and is trying to convince him.
By the way, I do want to interrupt at this one point because I have my weird brain. I immediately noticed as Victor runs past Liz, who he meets on the stairs, he's just like, hey Liz, how's it going? And then just keeps running. They didn't replace the banister that the professor fell over. That seems like a health hazard to me.
They need like a little sign, like it's been 2 days since our last accident here.
They make it seem like it's been like a month or so, but you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Victor follows Paul outside, and Elizabeth's like, well, this is my chance. I'm gonna go see what's going on in the lab.
Yeah.
And, you know,
nothing could go wrong there.
And, you know, as the creature does, he breaks the chains. So he breaks the chains before Elizabeth gets in there, and then, like, sees a window that kind of is like an angled window that goes out onto the roof. So he is, like, out of the lab before she comes in, but she sort of hears commotion out on the roof and follows.
Yeah. At this point, he kind of peeks in on her and knocks a piece of the glass into the acid bath, at which point it's like, oh, Chekov's acid bath. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Remind me of that.
So then, you know, we've got this, everything, all the pieces are coming together so that, you know, you've got Victor and Paul out on the lawn. They, you know, look up and they see that, like, you know, Elizabeth and the monster are on the roof. And so they see the monster's about to attack, and Victor this time tries to take a shot at the creature, but clearly does not have the aim that Paul did.
No, he runs up with his double-barreled old-timey pistol. And yeah, unfortunately, he does shoot Liz, which at this point it looks fatal.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a chest wound, like it's like right at the heart, and she falls.
Yeah. And I guess he didn't load. Or no, he does. He does take a shot at the monster and hits it as well.
But it doesn't slow him down at all. He just keeps coming. And then we get this like great bit where like Victor like picks up a lantern and throws it at the monster.
Right.
And it's like a full body, like he just goes up in flames. I'm assuming it's not Christopher Lee at this point, but like the stunt work here, like you've got a guy on fire for a pretty significant amount of time.
By the way, I also like the shot where Victor is throwing the lamp, because it looks like it was probably done for 3D, almost certainly, because he's throwing it into the camera.
Oh yeah,
so
probably so.
I did enjoy that because he was yelling at the camera, and then he was like, "I'll stop you or I'll end you," and then, and then the fire,
and then as you said, the Chekov's acid bath. So he on fire stumbles through that angled window, breaks through the glass, and falls directly into the acid bath, and is just gone. Like, in all of our previous instances where the creature dies, they leave it kind of ambiguous, but no, this creature has like
there's no coming back from that.
Yeah, he is completely just like obliterated by acid.
Right. He said within 30 minutes it was completely just disintegrated, nothing left. We cannot bring this monster back in this form.
Yeah, which kind of doesn't go so well for Victor, because now we have some deaths. We've got Elizabeth with a gunshot wound, and the only person, the creature isn't around to take the blame. So this explains why he's in jail. So it's not our usual thing of like, you're in jail for grave robbing. It's like you're in jail for murder.
Right. They only corroborated Justine's murder and maybe Elizabeth's attempted murder.
Yeah.
That's what I got out of it.
Yeah. And so this is the whole deal. This is why he's talking to the priest, is like, I need you to believe me. I need you to find Paul. I need I need somebody to corroborate all this and prove that I'm innocent. And then Paul actually shows up. Mm-hmm. And Victor's like, "Oh, thank God! Please tell him about the monster. Tell him the whole situation. The evidence is gone because of the acid bath. What a terrible coincidence.
Just say yes, everything I just said was true, and then we could be done with this."
Yeah, and Paul's like, "No, I'm not.
No, I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah, yeah, like the priest is there, and Paul doesn't. It's not like he's like, no, you belong here or anything. He's just like, I don't know anything about a creature. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Yeah,
but
you killed Justine.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
So then Paul like leaves, and this is where he goes and finds Elizabeth. She's got her arm in a sling, so she's fine. And he's like, "There's nothing we can do for him now."
That's the final Paul sucks moment. Is like, well, he's dead now. We got to go.
Yeah, and then like we cut back to Victor, and we see like him being led out, and then you just see out the window like the silhouette of a guillotine.
Right.
So I mean, at the end of this movie, it's not very well set up for there to be a sequel. Yeah, we know we've got 6 more ahead of us, but we've got the creature is totally gone, mm-hmm. and Victor's on his way to being decapitated, and he's not an undead monster, so one would assume that this guillotine would make quick work of him.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a rather cut and dry situation, right?
So of course, I don't really remember how he gets out of this, but I do remember. So like the deal with these movies is like the Universal movies, really the monster is the star.
Yeah.
And that's not really the case here. Here, Victor is the star who sort of like carries from film to film. I think there might be one that he's not in that's kind of like a weird circumstance, if I remember right.
Right.
But generally, this is sort of the story of Victor and his continued attempts at, creating life.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, it is all the movies going forward in the Hammer vein are still about a monster. It's just that monster happens to specifically be Baron Victor Frankenstein.
Yeah. So it's not just going to be like now he's working on something totally different. It's Victor definitely just wants to create monsters. It's just going to be sort of unique stories and unique attempts and stuff. And so I guess we'll see how he gets out of the guillotine and what his plans are next.
Yeah, this definitely mirrors, or like have you seen the Reanimator movies?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I feel like the Reanimator movies definitely took a cue from this specifically.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see us doing those at some point as well. Yeah, that first one is, iconic and well known, but that whole trilogy is a lot of fun. I don't know if people have seen the second and third, but they're a lot of fun. So yeah, that'd be a good month to do those three sometime in the future.
Absolutely.
But until then, next week we'll obviously be moving on to the second in the Hammer series, which is Revenge of Frankenstein.
Well, until then, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.